This is Kali Persall, editor of Institutional Investing and Infrastructure, and I'm here with the CEO of MPC Capital, an investment and asset manager of maritime and energy infrastructure, to discuss decarbonization of the shipping industry. So, Constantine, it's great to have you on today. Would you like to just introduce yourself and briefly touch on your role and responsibilities at MPC Capital?
Yes, of course, Kali, and thanks for having me. Looking forward to our discussion today. My name is Constantin Baack. I'm CEO of MPC Capital. We are stock listed in Frankfurt, an investment and asset manager. I have been with the group for the last better half of 17 years. In my capacity as CEO, I'm overseeing the overall strategy, merger and acquisitions, and I'm also overseeing all our maritime activities as part of the management board. We have around 280 people in 10 different offices, a main office in Hamburg, Germany, but we also have offices in Asia and also the Americas. And I'm looking forward to our discussion on the maritime space today.
That's great. Thanks so much. And yeah, so let's kick it off. So from what I understand, the shipping industry has been a big contributor to global greenhouse gas emissions, but it is now actively transitioning to more sustainable practices. So from your view, what are some of the key trends and challenges that are shaping the future of green shipping investments?
There are quite a few, to be frank. I mean, first of all, when you look at the trends and certainly most recent trends, there has been an increasing regulatory pressure in terms of the IMO goals, the IMO being the International Maritime Organization, in terms of reduction of greenhouse gases. There is another regulation called Fuel EU Maritime, which also stipulates certain let's say, constraints on the fuels that you burn and certain rules and regulations, and most recently also the ETS, so the trading system, carbon emission trading system, has been applied to the maritime industry. So a lot of things are happening which levy additional costs if you're not compliant, and certainly if the emissions go up. So more and more regulation is hitting the maritime space, which is a new trend. Secondly, obviously, technological innovation is another aspect to look out for. Items like energy efficiency devices, ship designs, retrofits, new fuels, new technology. Ships used to run on fossil fuels, so now we have ships that can run on green methanol, that can run on certain gas. So a lot is happening in the space. Alternative fuels being another trend, increasing focus on cleaner fuels in hand with some of the regulation, and very importantly also the demand for more transparency, and that is obviously working somewhat hand in glove with a lot of the ESG focus in terms of regulation, in terms of reporting, in terms of transparency. So a lot of things are happening when you look at the trends. And last but certainly not least, items like green financing, sustainability linked financing. So a lot of things that also have an impact on the way assets are financed are being more and more prominently present in the maritime space. So those are the trends. If you then look at the challenges, we have challenges related to high costs. So yard prices, meaning prices for new ships, have increased significantly over the years, not least because of inflation, but also because of higher technical specifications of the ships, meaning you're now having, and I mentioned it earlier, not just ships that run on fossil fuels, but you have so-called dual fuel concepts on board of ships. That means the main engine can burn different fuel types. In terms of another challenge is the fuel uncertainty. Over the last decades, it was clear you can buy and bunker fossil fuel all over the world, and there's a high uncertainty around what is the future fuel that reduces carbon emissions. A lot of uncertainty around that aspect. Regulatory ambiguity, another aspect. So whilst the EU is somewhat front runner in terms of new rules and regulation, they are partly regional and not global. And last but not least, when I look at challenges, I would name infrastructure limitations, meaning a global lack of infrastructure for alternative fuels, meaning bunker infrastructure, or other major barriers to expanding and to actually facilitating a green transition when it comes to shipping. So a lot of trends, a lot of challenges that we can dig into in more detail if you want.
All these new initiatives you mentioned, they need capital investment to make them work, right? So, from your view, what is the investment outlook for the decarbonization of the shipping industry? And what role can institutional investors play in driving the transition to greener ships?
That's quite a broad question, but let me try to start with, first of all, certain trends when you look at the institutional investor landscape, and for sure, we have seen over the last years, and I certainly expect that trend to continue in terms of asset allocation, a shift more towards alternative investments, and obviously within alternatives there is, private equity, private debt, real assets for that matter, and there you would also have the shipping industry. The decarbonization of the shipping industry has two legs, and one is obviously the ships, meaning the infrastructure on the water, but it's also the infrastructure that is basically on shore, and that includes production facilities for greener fuels, bunker infrastructure, which is currently basically dominated by fossil fuel bunker infrastructure, and obviously the ships on the water. And all of that is a very huge pool of investment needs. And with the need to decarbonize and the shift towards decarbonization, and certainly also the penalties that come hand in hand with that, there is a big playing field to these decarbonization efforts. They need to be financed. So there's a significant need of capital meeting a significant shift towards alternative investments. So there is, a very attractive path for this transition. We're talking about big projects. We're talking about big volumes, high investment needs for fleet renewal, for retrofits, for infrastructure upgrades, etc. And we are, as MPC Capital, serving as a bridge for institutional capital to enter the space, for us to co-invest alongside. And that is a very important field where I see the role of institutional investors growing more and more going forward. That's the capital side. Maybe in terms of green bonds and ESG integration, you have other aspects in terms of leverage. So you need the equity side, you need the credit side. There are a variety of products out there: green bonds, sustainability-linked loans, green loans. We have done a lot of these over the years, and we see that trend growing, and you need institutional capital to service that. So both on the equity and credit side, there's a significant need, and we're talking about billions and billions of dollars in order to facilitate the decarbonization of the maritime industry.
It seems like there's a lot of moving parts here, and institutional capital is definitely going to be necessary. That much is clear. What are some of the long and short-term investment opportunities in global maritime infrastructure that you're seeing?
Yeah, let's look at it from a more practical standpoint and some examples. I mean, for example, short-term opportunities, and we have done that together with partners over the last couple of years. One very obvious one, because you cannot just renew the fleet overnight. You also need to work with the vessels on the water, and those you need to optimize as well. So there are a variety of so-called retrofitting projects where you optimize the vessels in order to be more fuel efficient and hence reduce emissions. So investments in energy saving devices, batteries, or shore-based power. So there's a lot of things that can be done with the existing fleet. It sounds like a small part of the market, but it's huge because you have more than 50,000 vessels, commercial vessels globally, and a lot of them need to be retrofitted. Secondly, fleet renewal in general, and that means investments in next generation vessels equipped with zero emission technologies, different fuel systems. That is more relevant for containers, car carriers, and offshore, and a bit less to gain at this stage, at least for tankers and bulkers, because the trading pattern is a bit more uncertain. But certainly the overall fleet needs to be renewed if we want to achieve kind of a net zero down the road for the maritime industry. And that is a significant investment requirement as well. And last, but certainly not least, and I did allude to that earlier, is the whole topic of fuel infrastructure development. And that's expanding, for example, LNG bunkering facilities, and piloting infrastructure for emerging fuels like methanol or ammonia. Long-term opportunities include green ports, so development of fully electrified net zero emission ports, including shore power systems, etc. And that would include basically a complete reshaping of the way ports are being operated and are set up. Obviously, that is a longer term exercise, but certainly something that is on the cards. In addition, alternative fuel networks. So that means establishing global bunkering hubs for example, down the road for hydrogen, methanol, or ammonia. That is something that is not today investable, but is certainly something that will be required in order to pursue the transition of the maritime space and related activities down the road. And obviously, circular economy initiatives like investing in ship recycling, green recycling facilities to handle the surge of outdated vessels in compliance with environmental standards. There is a significant need to invest in that field as well. So, as you can see, a variety of topics that have to be tackled, and for each of these, which might sound a bit nichey, but we're really talking about billions and trillions of dollars that are needed for renewing the fleet and for providing for the overall maritime infrastructure for that matter.
And earlier you mentioned regulatory ambiguity as being a challenge facing the industry. I imagine this plays a big role in how it's greening up. So can you just explain the importance of robust global regulatory measures in creating favorable investment conditions?
Yes, and it is a very important topic because shipping by virtue of the activities is a global theme. Yet, as I mentioned earlier, there are some global, let's say, authorities or governing bodies. Yet there's obviously always the interaction and interlink with regional and governments in order to facilitate for a level playing field. And I think that is a key issue. Consistent rules across regions, preventing competitive disadvantages is a key regulatory issue. If you compare Europe to other places, for example, on this globe, Europe is currently, the front runner on certain new regulations being implemented regionally, and that obviously makes things not comparable. So that certainly is a thing to monitor, to keep an eye on, but that is a key theme. So level playing field. Secondly, in investment criteria, and what do I mean by that is basically clear and harmonized regulations are needed in order to provide investors with the necessary confidence and to also ensure you have secure residual values of investments. And uncertainty obviously is never good for an investment decision. It might create disruption and it might create opportunities, but investment certainty is a key aspect to consider at the same time. In addition, incentivizing innovation by way of government grants, all kinds of themes, but also regulations that provide for emission reductions, and innovation is key and is important. And there are also regional aspects differ from country to country or region to region, and that is also something that is very important to address in the years ahead. And last but certainly not least, unlocking of financing and favorable regulatory environment at some point needs to also translate into, for example, relief on underlying equity from financing banks if they provide a green loan, right? We're not quite there yet. So it's more a strategic decision of lenders to provide capital to certain decarbonization efforts. But banks are globally, or certainly in Europe, not yet supported to basically get an equity relief if they provide a green loan. And that is something that is also very important to be addressed going forward. But those are a few aspects that show the complexity and also the questions that are still unresolved in parts. And hence, you need to collaborate and need to find the right partners to have the right risk sharing on any investment decision to be made. And I think that is key in identifying the opportunities in the market.
Yes, thank you so much for providing such a clear picture of the industry. It seems like there's a lot to watch out for going forward, a lot of work in progress, but a lot of opportunities as well. So, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this today.
Of course, my pleasure, Kali, and thanks for having me, and all the best. Take care.